is Home Games. That is Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectator. Rick Zamperin from 900 CHML Radio. Bubba O'Neill from CHCH TV Sports. And I'm Scott Radley from the Spectator and 900 CHML. And guys, we now are into March Madness, one of the great events on the sports calendar, I think anyway. I think a lot of people do. Bubba O'Neill, let's go to you first on this one. You get a choice because they're kind of similar, same kind of age group, same kind of idea, I suppose. You get to go to one. March Madness or World Junior Hockey Championship? Which one is the better tournament?
Well, I mean, it's funny because, and not to skirt your question, but this is such an interesting year with the pandemic. Both have been tremendously affected in the way they are set up. The fact that, there was no crowd at the World Juniors for the most part. And this year we have a very limited crowd and the tournament all in one place in Indiana. So I would think this year, if I wanted to be anywhere, it would probably be the Final Four tournament, because at least there is some atmosphere. There is some unpredictability to the tournament, because this has been such a challenging year for college basketball that we just don't know who really is the number one team, even though Gonzaga is posted as the number one team. Whereas what I think with the World Juniors, I think we kind of know that who the top 3 or 4 teams would be going into the tournament.
I think all things being equal, if there are fans in the stands for both events, I think I'd probably still agree with Bubba and lean towards the NCAA Final Four, because every game matters. It's one and done. You win or you are going home. In saying that, I think the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament are fantastic because there's lots of upsets. But the playoffs in the World Junior Hockey Championship is where it's at, because now you have the heavy hitters. You don't have, the Kazakhstans and the Slovenias and all these lesser likes, duking it out to stay in the Group A. But come playoff time in the World Juniors, I mean, that action is amazing. If I had my druthers, probably the Final Four because of the one and done atmosphere and so many games to choose from. But I'd really like to, attend semifinals and gold medal games at the World Junior. So maybe a bit of both.
I was always a World Junior guy and really liked it the best. And I still think it's fantastic. But I agree with both guys that I probably want, if I had to pick one or the other, I would definitely go to March Madness because more of it. I mean, it's just a whole bunch more. It lasts a whole lot more time, and there's all those games that you can, if you're a slacker like I can be, that you can kind of pick up some games in the daytime. And there's another element of too that I've really come accustomed to it, and it's partly because we've covered women's basketball a little more and paid a lot more attention to it because of our great national team, and in the Spectator because of what Radley's done. Following Kia Nurse right from high school all the way through. So I become much more aware of the NCAA's women tournament, and it's kind of interspiced in there too. So I like to see the schools that have both teams in it. And it's going to, you can't judge it this year because of the size of the crowds, but I always like to see how the crowds are and how they react to, let's say, if Stanford has a men's team and a women's team in, or UConn has a men's and women. I like to look at that too. It's there's no direct comparison, but it's just kind of neat. It fills it in. Plus, there's the day in between when you actually get to the Final Four.
And the one thing, Steve, I thought you were going to say there, I was kind of surprised you didn't, but is the gambling part. No, which is the gambling part, because I mean, in past videos we've talked about NFL, CFL, that kind of thing, and the gambling issue. Man, March Madness is so funny. The NCAA takes these sort of semi-self-righteous, pious stands saying we're not endorsing gambling, but I mean, this tournament is what it is in a lot of ways because of brackets. Not in a lot of ways, in most ways, I think, because of office pools and brackets and people who wouldn't know that Gonzaga is a university, not a smelly cheese, quite honestly. But it's like, okay, sounds good to me. I'm with you. I mean, I have to make it a clean sweep, but given a choice, I would say I would go to see March Madness just because you're right. The one and done, the bands, the fans, the volume, the everything. Although Canada playing in a World Junior final on Canadian soil, that one
that's interesting. That's interesting, though, Scott. You had to put parameters around it, right? If you have to say it has to be in Canada, because the tournament just isn't the same when it's played in Buffalo or if it's played in Grand Forks or even anywhere in Europe, right? It's just not the same. I just don't think that I think this is kind of mean to say, but I think we can all agree about this, that no country cares more about the World Juniors more than Canada, right?
100%.
Whereas the NCAA tournament, there's every single school. And you're talking about the mid-majors, you're talking about the big schools, you're talking about the tweeners as well. Everyone cares. I can't remember too many times, other than in the finals or maybe in the semifinals, where you see actual athletes in tears, where you do see that in the NCAA on a regular basis because of the one and done format.
Now, on the gambling front too, I mean, name me another sport on the planet where non-fans or tiny kind of diehards are gambling, not knowing who the other opponent is or some of the players on that
Right.
on the court. Maybe other than Super Bowl prop bets, which you can get a little crazy with,
Right.
the anthem length or whatever the case is, what the halftime show guest is wearing. The NCAA Final Four tournament, brackets aplenty. Anybody can fill out a bracket. Do it on nicknames, on team colors, a hunch, flip a coin. You can do it, and you can, put some money down on the table.
And Rick, we did that Steve, just before you jump in. We did
Yeah.
that a few years ago at the paper. We had a number of people in the newsroom, and we gave each of them parameters. So one was on which color uniform do you like better, which was on which city sounds more fun to visit, which was on, which team's nickname sounds more ferocious, whatever it was. And you want to know what won? Favorites. If you're going to bet, just bet on the favorite every time, and you'll probably win your bracket. But anyway, Steve, go ahead.
Well, one of the secrets of the NFL during the 70s, why it became so ensconced, was office pools. And it's one of the reasons everybody said they never, ever wanted to go to a single point and a 2-point convert and all of those kinds of things, was because it increased the number of ways that you can bet, and which made it hard for the casual person. All right, so to look at. So that's been a great American tradition, to prop up great events through betting, and that's how you get your casual viewers and those kinds of things. I'd like to go back maybe a little bit to the World Juniors and the thing about Canada at home. I always thought the playing field, having covered a number of them, and that playing field was so tilted. Yes, the excitement is there in Canada. But I always thought it was so tilted in Canada's favor because of the size of the rink, and it seems every second tournament is at home. It's taken took away this one storyline, which is the plucky underdog Canadians, because you can never be underdogs no matter what in that situation. So I just wanted to point that out as a little bit of a counterweight to the World Junior thing, that it's everybody's home court essentially, except for the nearest state universities in both the men's and the women's March Madness.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the other things, years ago, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I guess, I was covering one that was down in Buffalo for a March Madness. And this little tiny guy from Davidson University ran on the court, who I didn't really know anything about. And it was Steph Curry playing against, I believe, was playing against Virginia. And Virginia was huge. And they came out in their black warm-up uniforms. They looked like Darth Vader against this little Davidson team. And Davidson hung on. And that was the moment when you went, for me, I mean, I already loved it, but if you can be that tiny school and fight Darth Vader and almost beat them, that's the beauty. That's why you just don't see that. As much as I love the World Juniors, you just don't see the Afghani national hockey team coming to World Juniors and beating Canada or almost beating Canada.
Let me just ask the other guys this, if there's anything like this. You bring up a really great point about when you mentioned Steph, and that's a 3-point shot. And that's the kind of the great equalizer for the underdog team. It's been a rule for a long time, but the emphasis on that shot over recent years, that's gone back and forth between the colleges, definitely filtered down to college now. If you watch the college games, hockey doesn't have anything like that, do they? Where it's that
hot goalie might be the only equalizer.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're I don't know, Switzerland and your goalie stands on his head, you have a chance at beating one of the heavy hitters. If you don't, then forget it.
Yeah, that counts to go to the shootout. The shootout might be that. If you can drag a game to the shootout, maybe.
Yeah. But that's a skill set thing, not necessarily a rule.
Exactly. Bubba, take us home.
Well, no, and not so much in terms of rules, because I mean the games are so different. But to kind of go where you guys were going there, I believe just the fear of the unknown is also an unbelievable part of these tournaments that we do see, that which I think you just can't duplicate in the World Juniors, because generally you might have played some tournaments. You might have known about some guys earlier who were coming up in that Gretzky-Holinka tournament where they're under 17s. Whereas again, you're talking about big schools playing small schools playing small schools, maybe that have never seen each other, teams from totally different conferences that have very little film to really understand with each other. And again, because you're playing on an everyday basis, there's really no time to prepare for these actual schools. So I think that added element of surprise sometimes is very difficult for the players, because there may be that little scrappy guy when you're a 7-footer that's in your face that you just don't know about on how to play.
Can I just add the one last thing that's great about both of them? Age.
Yep.
Therefore, mistakes.
And the other thing now that has come into play for the NCAA, which I think is a huge disadvantage to them, but it also makes them a little more equal, is it's now very much a one and done tournament. Before, you would have NCAA teams with 4-year teams. Now, like the World Juniors, most guys are playing in that tournament for 1 year, so it can change very quickly. What do you think? World Juniors or NCAA March Madness? We're going to hand you, well, not really, but we're going to hand you theoretically a pair of tickets to one of those two. Which one do you grab? Which hand? Let us know down below. We'd love to hear from you. And subscribe, by the way. Subscribe to these videos. Hit notifications so you know when we're putting one of these out. Take care.